Garatnam, Professor Tan Tai Yong, Excellencies, esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening and a very warm welcome to the 37th Singapore lecture titled India's Singapore Story. ISEAS is privileged to host this lecture, which will be delivered by His Excellency Shri Narendra Modi, Prime Minister of India. We are also honored by the presence of Mr. Hsien Loong, Prime Minister of Singapore, and Ms. Ho Ching here with us this evening. To begin the proceedings, I have the pleasure of inviting Deputy Prime Minister, Mr. Tharman Shanmugaratnam, to deliver his opening remarks, introduce our distinguished speaker, and chair the proceedings. DPM, sir.
His Excellency Narendra Modi, Prime Minister of the Republic of India, Mr. Hsien Loong, Prime Minister of the Republic of Singapore, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to the 37th Singapore lecture. Prime Minister Modi, thank you for agreeing to deliver this lecture during your official visit to Singapore, despite an extremely tight schedule. This year, as Singapore celebrates 50 years of nationhood, we also celebrate the friends who have stood by Singapore since its earliest days. India was the second country to establish diplomatic relations with Singapore. It also supported our entry into the United Nations, the Afro-Asian Conference, and the non-aligned movement at a time when gaining recognition and international legitimacy was critical to a fledgling nation. From this early friendship, we have developed a vibrant and multifaceted relationship over the 5 decades. Our economic relations are strong, with Singapore being one of the largest investors in India today. Our companies are active in sectors relevant to India's development and indeed to Prime Minister Modi's priorities, sectors such as urban solutions, infrastructure, aviation, ports, and logistics. And many Indian companies have likewise established regional and global operations in Singapore. Our people-to-people relations run deep, as does our cooperation in the defense and cultural spheres. Even as we celebrate the past 50 years, we want to build a partnership for the next 50 years. Tomorrow, the two prime ministers will be signing a strategic partnership that will not only elevate relations, but also chart the way forward in the coming decades. We thank Prime Minister Modi for his firm support for the strategic partnership. Ladies and gentlemen, Prime Minister Modi was born of humble beginnings in Gujarat, a state where he subsequently rose to become its chief minister from 2001 to 2014. During his 3 terms as chief minister, Gujarat's economy nearly tripled in size, benefiting millions of people. He achieved this transformation by improving infrastructure, attracting investment, and modernizing Gujarat's bureaucracy, and with his trademark vision, discipline, and decisiveness. This came to be known as the Gujarat model. Since taking office as Prime Minister, Mr. Modi has brought the same drive to the national stage. He has reinvigorated the India story, launching a number of bold national initiatives such as Make in India, 100 Smart Cities, and Skill India, each seeking to address the key challenges and opportunities for India. Countries and companies from around the world are being drawn to India by his commitment to create an open and competitive environment for investments and development. Beyond India, Prime Minister Modi has also moved quickly to re-energize its foreign policy, both regionally and globally. Indeed, India has a significant role to play in our region, and its Act East policy will be very positively received. We are confident that India will remain an important stakeholder in the region and continue to make vital contributions to Southeast Asia and Singapore. It is now my privilege to invite Prime Minister Modi to deliver the 37th Singapore Lecture on the topic, India's Singapore Story. Prime Minister Modi, please.
Excellency, Prime Minister Hsien Loong, Excellency, Deputy Prime Minister Shanmugaratnamji, Honorable Ministers, Professor Tan Tai Yong, distinguished guests, thank you for the honor and privilege of delivering the Singapore lecture. I'm conscious that I walk in the footsteps of our leaders who have shaped modern India. And our relationship with this region. President Sri APJ Abdul Kalam, Prime Minister P.V. Narasimha Rao, and former Prime Minister Shri Atal Bihari Vajpayee. Mr. Prime Minister, I'm deeply honored that you have joined us here. We have been on the road together in the past few weeks for the G20 and the ASEAN and East Asia summits. This tells you how deeply linked the destinies of our two nations are. To the people of Singapore, on 50 years of independence, I extend the greetings and the good wishes of 1.25 billion friends and admirers. In the life of humans and nations, milestones of a time are natural, but few countries can celebrate the first 50 years of existence with a sense of pride and satisfaction that Singapore deserves too. And I can do no better than to begin with homage to one of the tallest leaders of our time and the architect of modern Singapore, Lee Kuan Yew, to capture his mission in own words. He gave his life to see a successful Singapore. And it was with his well-known determination that he saw Singapore to its golden jubilee year. His impact was global. And in him, India had a well-wisher who spoke with the honesty of true friendship. He believed in India's potential at home and her role abroad more than many in India. For me, he was a personal inspiration. From his Singapore stories, I drew many lessons. The most profound, yet simple idea was that transformation of a nation begins with a change in the way we are. And that it was as important to keep your city and surroundings clean as it was to build modern infrastructure. For me too, In India, the Swachh Bharat campaign is not just a program to clean our environment, but to transform the way we think, live, and work. For quality, efficiency, and productivity are not just technical measures, but also a state of mind and a way of life. So in my visit to Singapore this March, and in the observance a day's morning in India, we wanted to honor a true friend and a very special relationship. Singapore is a nation that has become a metaphor for the reality of dreams. Singapore teaches us many things. The size of a nation is no barrier to the scale of its achievements. And the lack of resources is no constraint for inspiration, imagination, and innovation. When a nation embraces diversity, it can unite behind a common purpose. And international leadership flows from the power of thought, not just from the orthodox measures of strength. Singapore has done more than just lift a nation in the highest level of prosperity within a generation. It has inspired the region's progress and led in its integration. Our success flows not from the aggregate of numbers and the size of investments. It is based on what I believe is the key to success: the quality of human resources, the belief of a people, and the resolve of a nation. Distinguished members of the audience, it is with the same vision that we are pursuing the transformation of India. People are the purpose of our efforts, and they will be the power behind change. I do not judge the success of our efforts from the cold statistics of number, but from the warm glow of smile on the human faces. So, one set of our policies are to empower our people. The other set to create the conditions in which enterprise flourishes, opportunities expand, and the potential of our citizens are unlocked. So we are investing in our people through skill and education, special focus on the girl child education, financial inclusion, sustainable habitats, clean rivers and smart cities, and access to basic needs of all our citizens, from water and sanitation to power and housing. We will nurture and defend an environment in which every citizen belongs and participates, secure of her rights and confident about her opportunities. And we are creating opportunities by reforming our laws, regulations, policies, processes, and institutions. By the way we govern ourselves and the way we work with state governments. Together, with this software of change, we are also building the hardware of progress, next generation infrastructure. revived manufacturing, improved agriculture, easier trade and smarter services. That is why we are moving on many fronts at the same time, aware of the linkages that makes up a comprehensive strategy. I learned long ago that Singaporeans are too well informed about India to be burdened with numbers by visitors even from India. In any case, for me, the emergence of India as the fastest growing major economy in the world is less important than what is more enduring. The wheels of change are moving. Confidence is growing. Resolve is stronger and the direction is clearer. And it is spreading across the nation at the most distant village and the farthest citizen begin to join the mainstream of national economy. Distinguished guests, India and Singapore have been together at many crossroads of time. Our relationship is written in the pages of history, the footprints of culture, the ties of kinship, and the old connection of commerce. We stood together in friendship at the dawn of freedom, and we reached out to each other in a partnership of shared hopes. Singapore's success became an inspiration of Indians. And in turn, India became the hope for a more peaceful, balanced, and stable world. As India opened itself, Singapore became India's springboard to the world and gateway to the East. No one worked harder for it, and no deserves more credit for it than Emeritus Senior Minister Goh Chok Tong. He reconnected India to Singapore and the region. Today, Singapore is one of our most important partners in the world. It is a relationship that is as strategic as it is wide-ranging. We have comprehensive defense and security relations. It flows out of shared interests and a common vision. Singapore holds regular exercise with end in India. Singapore is the biggest investment source and destination for India in the world. The world's most connected nation to India, the largest training partner in Southeast Asia, and a popular destination for tourists and students. Now, as we build the India of our dreams, Singapore is already a major partner in the enterprise. World-class human resources, smart cities, clean rivers, clean energy, or next-generation sustainable infrastructure. Starting from the first IT park in Bengaluru, it now includes the newest state capital in India, Amravati in Andhra Pradesh. Our partnership will expand as our economies grow and the framework of trade and investment improves further. But I have always seen Singapore is loftier terms. Singapore's success in overcoming odds leads me to seek a partnership that addresses the challenges of 21st century, from food and water to clean energy and sustainable habitats. And in many ways, Singapore will also influence the course of our region in this century. Mr. Prime Minister, distinguished members, this area covers the arc of Asia-Pacific and Indian Ocean regions. However, we choose to define it. The underlying theme of connected histories and interconnected destinies stand out clearly. This is the reason of expanding freedom and prosperity. It is a home to two the most populous nations, some of the world's largest economies, and the world's most talented and hardworking people. Asia's re-emergence is the greatest phenomenon of our era. From the darkness of the middle of the last century, Japan led Asia's rise. It then extended to Southeast Asia, Korea, and China. And India is now the bright hope for sustaining Asian dynamism and prosperity. But this is also a region with many unsettled questions and unresolved disputes. Our competing claims and contested norms, of the expanding military power and extending shadow of terrorism, and uncertainties on seas and vulnerability in cyberspace. The region is not an island in a vast ocean, but deeply connected and influenced by the world beyond. We are also a region of disparities within and between states, where the challenges of habitats, food and water remain, where our gifts of nature and wealth of traditions feel the pressure of rapid progress, and our agriculture and islands are threatened by climate change. Asia has seen some of this at different points of this history, but it has probably never been here before, and Asia is still finding a path through its multiple transitions to a peaceful, stable, and prosperous future. It is a journey that must succeed, and Singapore and India must work together to realize it. India's history has been inseparable from Asia. There were times when we turned inwards, and now, as we reintegrated more closely with Asia, we are returning to history. We are retracking our ancient maritime and land routes with the natural instincts of an ancient relationship. And in the course of last 18 months, my government has engaged more with this region than any other in the world. From a new opening with Pacific Island nations, Australia and Mongolia, to more intense engagement with China, Japan, Korea, and ASEAN members, we have pursued our vision with purpose and vigor. India and China share a boundary and 5,000 years of continuous engagement. Monks and merchants have nurtured our ties and enriched our societies. It is a history reflected in the 7th century journey of Hsien Loong that I have had the privilege of connecting. From my birthplace in Gujarat to Xi'an in China, where President Xi hosted me this May, we see it in our religious texts written in Sanskrit, Pali, and Chinese. In the letters of the past, exchanged with warmth and grace in India's famous Tenchui saris, and in Shinapatta, the Sanskrit name for skill. Today, we constitute 2/5 of humanity and two of the world's fastest growing major economies. China's economic transformation is an inspiration for us. And as it rebalances its economy, and as India steps up the pace of its growth, we can both reinforce each other's progress. And we can advance stability, and prosperity in our region. And together, we can be more effective in addressing our common global challenges. From trade to climate change, we have our unresolved issues, including our boundary question, but we have been able to keep our border region peaceful and stable. And we have agreed to strengthen strategic communication and expand convergence. We explore shared economic opportunities while addressing common threats like terrorism. India and China will engage constructively across the complexity of the relationship as two self-assured and confident nations, aware of their interests and responsibilities. Just as China's rise has driven the global economy, the world looks at China to help advance global and regional peace and stability. India and Japan may have discovered each other somewhat later, but my friend Prime Minister Abe showed me in the magnificent shrine of Kyoto the symbol of our much longer spiritual engagement. And more than 100 years ago, as Swami Vivekananda reached the shore of Japan, he exhorted the Indian youth to go east to Japan. Independent India took that advice seriously. There are few partnerships that enjoy so much goodwill in India as our relations with Japan. No nation has contributed so much to India's modernization as Japan. Cars, metros, and industrial parks, for example. And no partner is likely to play a big role in India's transformation as Japan. We do more together now. We see this as a strategic partnership that is vital for securing a peaceful and stable Asia, Pacific and Indian Ocean regions. With Korea and Australia, our relationship started with strong economic foundations and have become strategic in content. And ASEAN is the anchor of our Act East policy. We are linked by geography and history, united against many common challenges and bound by many shared aspirations. With each ASEAN member, we have deepening political, security, defense, and economic ties. And as ASEAN community leads the way to regional integration, we look forward to a more dynamic partnership between India and ASEAN that holds rich potential for our 1.9 billion people. With almost the entire region, India has frameworks of economic cooperation. We want to be more deeply integrated with the regional economy, and we will upgrade our partnership agreements and work for an early conclusion of regional comprehensive economic partnership agreement. In the flux and transition of our times, the most critical need in this region is to uphold and strengthen the rules and norms that must define our collective behavior. This is why we must all come together in East Asia Summit and other forms to build a cooperative and collaborative future, not on the strength of a few, but on the consent of all. India will work with countries in the region and beyond, including the United States and Russia, our East Asia Summit partners, so ensure that our commons, ocean, space, and cyber remain avenues of shared prosperity. Not become new threats to countries India will lend its strength to keep the seas safe, secure, and free for the benefit of all. This is an age of interdependence when nations to realize the promise of this century. We must also do because our pressing challenges are not from one another but common to each of us. Terrorism is one such major global challenge and a force larger than individual groups. Its shadow stretches across our societies and our nations, both in recruitment and choice of targets. It does not just take a toll of lives, but can derail economies. The world must speak in one voice and act unison. There will be political, legal, military, and intelligence efforts. But we must do more. Countries also must be held accountable for centuries' support, arms, and funds. Nations must cooperate more with each other. Societies must reach out within and to each other. We must de-link terrorism from religion and assert the human values that define every faith. We are a few days away from Paris, where we must achieve concrete outcome in accordance with the principle of UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. This is especially important for our region, particularly the small island states. Friends, ours is a region of enormous promise, but we know that enduring peace and prosperity is not inevitable. So we must work hard to realize our vision of an Asian century of freedom, peace, and prosperity. Asia had the wisdom of its ancient culture and all the great religions of the world. It also had the energy and drive of youth. As Asia's first Nobel laureate, Rabindranath Tagore, predicted on a visit to this region nearly a century ago, Asia is regaining its self-consciousness for realization of its own self. Here in Singapore, where the region's currents merge, its diversity converges, ideas meet, and aspirations gather wings. I feel that we are closer to that vision than ever before. And as India pursues its transformation and strives for peaceful and stable world, Singapore will be a major partner on that journey. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Prime Minister Modi, for delivering the 37th Singapore Lecture. Representing the IC's Board of Trustees, Professor Tan Tai Yong will now present a special memento to Prime Minister Modi. It is a piece of art, a special creation by Mr. Iskandar Jalal, Singapore's foremost artist in ceramics and pottery. The title of the piece is After the Rain. Thank you, Professor Tan. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of the 37th Singapore Lecture. May I ask that you remain in your seats while Prime Minister Modi, Prime Minister Lee, Ms. Ho Ching and their respective delegations leave the ballroom. Thank you very much. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience.